Welcome to the Altis podcast. I'm your host, Stu McMillan. In this series of podcasts, I'm sitting down with some of the speakers from our very first Altis conference. It's called the Speed Summit. It's coming up in Chicago this June. If you haven't grabbed your ticket yet, the Altis Speed Summit, which is presented by 3x4 Genetics, is set to be the most impactful speed event ever held. Over 3 days, June 6, 7, and 8, we're bringing together top coaches, scientists, and performance leaders for deep, hands-on learning, challenging the way in which we think, train, and coach. Huge thanks to our sponsors for the event, 3x4 Genetics, Stat Sports, 1080 Sprint, and Team Builder for making this event possible. Early bird pricing is available until March 31st, so that's coming up really soon. Check out altis.world for details. Today, a bit of a unique one because I'd never met this gentleman before, Dr. Ramsey Nijem. I should have asked him how I pronounce his last name. I hope I didn't just butcher that. Ramsey's path in performance coaching is super impressive, really unique. At just 23, he entered the NBA as an assistant S&C coach for the Sacramento Kings. And by 25, he became the youngest ever head strength and conditioning coach in the NBA. Super impressive. At 27, he earned his doctorate, and not long after, he joined the University of Kansas men's basketball program as the director of sport performance, helping to lead the team to a national championship in 2022. We talked about, what drives him, how he balances his coaching and education and kind of his process, continual learning, and what he believes young coaches need to understand if they want to make a real impact. This was a really, really interesting conversation. I don't get a lot of opportunities to speak in depth with people that I have never spoken with recently. I haven't done that for a long, long time. So I really enjoyed this. I started, as always, by asking him, what does he do and why does he do it?
Yeah, I mean, currently on paper, on title, I'm the director of sport performance for men's basketball at the University of Kansas. And I've been working with basically high-level basketball players for the past 12 years or so. 5 years in the NBA with the Sacramento Kings, 5 years now, entering my sixth season with Kansas basketball. So that's what I do, on title at least. Beyond that, education stuff, just posting a ton about mostly research, trying to bring that to the forefront and help coaches understand that stuff. Try to make that simple. One of my kind of goals beyond coaching athletes is just making sports science simple for people, whether that's through obviously social media content and Instagram, or I have a couple courses. I have a coaching certification, but then I also have a force plate course. And my goal, my only goal when someone basically engages with me is that they feel like that was really easy to understand. But as we've talked about already prior to the recording, doing that while appreciating the nuance of sport and the sports science and those things can be challenging. So so that's kind of what I'm doing on kind of both ends, whether it's coaching day to day college basketball players at this point, or is it trying to share and make sports science simple for other coaches to go out and make their athletes a little bit better. And those two, I think, fit kind of my current, at least in my current chapter of life, the passions that I have, helping my athletes every day, but then also helping other people help their athletes. So that's kind of what I'm busy with day to day at this point.
So two, maybe even three kind of different things. I'd assume for two, maybe three different reasons. So let's start off with the coaching bit.
Yeah.
Why do you coach? What are
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
getting from that?
Yeah. I mean, I think as you would know, and other people that you've engaged with, whether it's on this pod or any event, I think it's those few moments in the few and far in between moments when the athlete has that moment of success and you get to know that you played a fraction of a percentage to help them achieve that. And maybe even a little bit better when they turn around and give you that hug or give you that moment of gratitude that you were part of that process. I think that that's probably what we're all in this for. I mean, if I think back to, I've been able to do that here at Kansas. We had basically same group of guys. This was before the college landscape has really changed. And for 3 years, I had the same group of guys. and we went through it together. We went through becoming the number one team in the country, by far the best team in the country, and then COVID hit, so we didn't have an NCAA tournament. And then followed that up the next year with a team that was just okay. Rather than going into the portal and leaving, all those players stayed. We got better, and then we won a national championship with that same crew. And so when I think back to like what's a moment in my career that's defined why I do it, it would be standing there on the court in New Orleans after we win. The buzzer goes off, there's confetti, and I'm watching players come over and hug me in tears, right? And it's like that moment, I think, is what I'm searching for still, right? And we probably all are. So I think that's why I do what I do as far as just coaching and trying to help the few guys. I work with 20 kids, so it's not like I'm working with a ton of them, but right now, every day is like, can I relive that moment, right? And so the good news is every year we get a chance to do it. So hopefully next season we can make that happen. So yeah, that's why I would say why I'm doing it currently for sure.
Any danger in that? Like if you're always seeking for that one moment that you've already had, you've been to the mountaintop already.
Yeah, it's
Right
funny.
now, it's the rest of your career is, can I get back to the top of that mountain again?
Yeah, it was, and I've talked about that with our guys. It's like it's a blessing and a curse,
Mm-hmm.
because it becomes this perpetual seeking of that moment again, right? It's like, and I think it could be dangerous but only if you've decided that fulfillment has to come from achieving it. Because the reality is you're not going to achieve that every year, right? No team wins it every single year. So the reality is if that becomes the only way you find fulfillment, then you're basically setting yourself up for failure every year. So I wouldn't say that I wouldn't define my success or fulfillment by that moment, but I think that that's the carrot at the end of this thing that continues to, make you wake up and put the racing shoes on and try to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it definitely could be dangerous, and it's hard too now because with college landscape has changed a ton, and maybe the listeners on here aren't familiar with college basketball in particular, but with the transfer portal now, players are coming in and going out within 6, 7, 8 months, and that's different than what it used to be. It used to be you would have a guy for 3, 4 years, and so you can watch them grow and watch them
Right.
develop, and even if you didn't win a national championship, at the end of the day, you watch them grow as a person. You watch them put on 20 pounds of muscle and all the things, that we could measure. You've seen that happen. So even that's becoming harder, though, now with the current landscape for sure.
Yeah, so that brings up next question then. Like, how do you, for these kids, tease apart the seeking of that achievement and the actual achievement? Like
Hmm.
if they've done all this work, they've done everything the coaches have said, and they don't, just hasn't worked out. I'm sorry, I'm out. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
find someone else to do it. Where part of our role, obviously, is to get them to understand and respect and appreciate the seeking of the achievement. Sometimes even more than the achievement itself. Yeah, the achievement matters. That's kind of why we're all doing it to begin with, like you said. But if you're not finding some sort of achievement in the process or in the seeking of it,
Hmm.
and it's going to be a a long and probably fairly miserable career for these guys.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, I'm kind of fortunate in a sense that I'm working with players that a lot of them do have a chance to become NBA players.
Mm.
And so we can kind of separate achieving the goals as a team, right? Whether it's winning conference titles or national championships and those things, like that's a goal that we're all aiming towards. But then there's also kind of that process goal at the individual level. It's like even if we don't achieve those things, you still need to come in here and get better every single day because you still have another level that you have to get to, which would be, becoming a professional, going to the NBA. And so I think that's one way I try to tease them separately is like whether we're having a good year or bad year, that can't affect the way you show up every day because although that's my one goal, you have multiple goals, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to do that and get to the NBA. Now, the nice thing is those things typically go hand in hand. If teams that have better years, players go to the NBA. But I think that's kind of how I try to tease them out and separate them. It's like the process of every day you have to show up. You have to have a pro day is what I would call it. And a pro day is you've done everything that you need to today to get better. And that's did you eat 3 meals? Did you have your snacks? Did you lift? Did you train? Did you take recovery serious? When you were on the court for that hour, or if we practiced for 2 hours, did you give everything you have? And if you could check all those boxes for the day, you had a pro day. And now can we stack up pro days, right? Every day is not going to be a pro day, but if you can look back at the end of every month and say, damn, I had 27 pro days this month, you got a good chance of reaching your potential. And so that's kind of how I try to separate it from my guys, understand that we have one goal, but you also have a personal goal, and we're all trying to get you there as well. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we try to do it.
How has that changed with the portal? I mean, is that now way more challenging for you to have those conversations and get the buy-in from the kids?
It's not much harder for me to have the conversation.
Yeah.
But I do think at some level the impact of that conversation isn't what it used to be,
Mm.
because I used to have those conversations with athletes that I had for 2 to 3 years, right? And it's like
Mm.
they've seen the work, they've seen it work, and they've seen that they came in at 190 and they weigh 210 now. Like they've seen these things, and so they begin to trust, I think, the message a little bit more. Versus, if you have a guy for 6 months, before you could trust the message, you got to trust the messenger. And because I only have 6 months with you, I don't think that relationship is rooted as deep as it once was, right? And so, but the message is still the same, because whether you're going to stay here for multiple years or go to a different school, or you're a senior and you're graduating, like whatever it is, I still want the best for you. So I'm still going to have those conversations. But yeah, for sure, I think that the impact of that conversation is probably predicated on the relationship. And the reality is, if you only had a guy for, if I had guys just now. I mean, we have seniors that are graduating, and the first time I met them was last, June. And so it's not even a year in, and I might not work with that kid ever again, because he's a
Yeah.
senior and and he might go play overseas in Europe or something, right? Like that's the reality that we deal with now.
So then with that reality, do you find yourself, okay, now I may only have 6 months, 12 months, whatever. So I need to try to get to this position, this place within building the trust with these players earlier. So I have to do something a little bit different than I did in the past, because now it's a much more constricted space of time. Or are you still doing it kind of the way you've always done it? All right, we can't rush this process, because it
Yeah,
is a process. I mean, that would be, I feel like if I'm in your shoes, I'm thinking, okay, man, this kid just came here. I got to get him to buy in, because I mean, he might be leaving next year, right? So I really, really need to get him buying what I'm saying or what I'm selling. So I might rush that.
yeah, yeah.
I feel like maybe that's not a good approach.
Yeah, yeah. I would say I would agree with the latter. I wouldn't say I rushed the process. It's whether you're gonna be here with me for 6 months or you might be here with me for 6 years. Like
Yeah.
the process is the process, and it has to
Uh,
play itself out. And at some level, even I think some of the capacity stuff, some of the things we can measure out, like putting weight on a guy. Like maybe I'm a little biased or maybe a little different in this regard, but I also don't want to rush putting mass on guys or some of the performance outcomes that we're striving towards. I really don't even want to rush that process, because,
mhm.
at the end of the day, if you're only going to be with me for 6 months, my goal hopefully is we can keep you healthy for these 6 months. And that right there alone might be a win. Because, guys are coming in. We've had guys come in that are super seniors. And it's like, yo, you've been working with probably a quality strength coach for the past 4 years. For me,
What's the super senior?
someone who is in his fifth or even sixth year in
Okay,
college.
got it.
Um, maybe they had a redshirt year, maybe they got a COVID year back. Some of our athletes have had that. And so it would almost be arrogant of me for me to think, well, you've been working with a quality strength coach for 4 years, and you're going to come and work with me for 6 months, and I'm going to somehow change your life. Like that's just not reality.
Yeah.
But if we wanted you here, you're probably good enough to play here, in which case, as long as I can keep you available and on that court, hopefully you can do what you're supposed to do. And that alone might be a win. So, but that conversation has changed a ton. Like in years past before a transfer portal, you wouldn't have to think like that, right? It's almost
Mhm.
like we're getting a ton of freshmen and we're going to develop those guys and we're going to have multiple years. And so that vantage point is definitely kind of a result of the current landscape of like, I got guys that are coming in and you're 24 years old and you got here in June and you're going to be done in April. And
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to turn you into a monster, right? It's like, that's not real. Um,
Is
so
that
yeah,
frustrating for you?
uh, a little bit. It's only frustrating in a sense of I think we all care deeply about our athletes, and so you begin to build those relationships, and it's almost like, damn, it's not frustrating during, but like currently, right? I mean, as we record this, it's March and our season just ended, and I'm sitting here looking at guys that it's like, damn, I hate that I can't keep working with you.
Yeah.
I hate that I only got 6 months with you. I hate that you're a senior and your college basketball career is over and you're gonna go somewhere else. And I wish the best for you. But damn, I do wish I was part of that process still. So that part I think is a little frustrating for sure.
Mm.
Um, but it's we all signed up for it. It's what we're all in college basketball, and that's the current landscape.
Absolutely. Nothing much we can do about it.
No, not at all.
So that's coaching. That's the why on coaching. Talk to me about the coaching education. Why do you do that? So whether that's through your courses that you have online, or whether it's your Instagram, which you do a really good job of sort of educating on a micro perspective, by the way. What led you down that road? Why do you do it? Why do you continue to do it? Why do you think it's important?
Yeah, no one's ever asked me that really. But I've always felt like I think it stemmed from how I basically grew up in the space as a performance coach. My both my early mentors have PhDs. My first mentor that gave me my first shot, gave me my first internship. He had a PhD. He has a PhD, and I remember when I got my CSCS, and I go to him, and I'm like, Jeremy. His name is Jeremy Bettel, and I say, Jez, I got my CSCS, and he kind of makes a joke. He says, well, I'll raise you a PhD, and so. And he had all the JSCR blue journals in his office, and I was like, "What's that?" And he was like, "That's research." And I remember taking one home and reading my first experiment, and I'm sitting there, as we all are when you're 18, 19 in the game, like you just think you're gonna do bicep curls and make people better. And so just learning that process, I think, heavily influenced me early.
Mm.
Um, and then one thing that, I've been fortunate to land some fun opportunities early in my career. So, when I'm sitting there at 23 years old, I was an assistant strength coach in the NBA at 23 years old. And the reality is nobody's going to take me very serious if I say anything based on my experience, right? If the rationale that I'm delivering is based on my experience as a 23-year-old, nobody's going to take me serious. The people that were my colleagues and peers had 23 years of coaching experience, right? And I had 23 years on this planet. And so I think early in my career, I just had to lean into that because the only way I can have credibility in a conversation was if I could provide some level of evidence for it. And levels of evidence could be research based, it could be experience based, right? There's other ways to bring it, but I knew nobody was going to take me serious if I said, well, I worked with a player for 3 months last year, and this is, it's like they're going to say, sit down. But if I said, well, here's a systematic review that shows this, they might take me a little more serious. And so I think early in my career that resonated with me. I found that people much older than me would invite me to more conversations, allow me to have a seat at the table. And it was just based on the amount of, they knew I was reading a ton and just trying to learn. Um, and so I think that has probably shaped why I'm still passionate about it. And I think I'm just curious, like we all are. Like to me, it's super interesting to read about some of this stuff. So I think that's probably why I kind of have leaned into some of this stuff now. And then early in my career, social media wasn't huge. Now, I wouldn't say like I'm combating bad information, but there's so much information out there that if I could just try to shine the light on some level of research, I think that can help a little bit because a lot of people just say stuff, right? And it's like, oh, there's a lot of bad information out there. So, yeah, it's probably a long-winded way to answer that, but that's kind of how I think through it.
So part of it then is number one, you saw your unique ability as being better educated, more curious. You wanted to know more so you could get, as you said, a seat on the table with the people who have the experience that you didn't have. And then number two, you see, all right, the sharing of not necessarily the best information online. You said, well, I'm curious. I've got this curiosity myself, and let me share that with others. That's pretty accurate?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the same thing
And
with your courses as well, because the courses I'm assuming is a lot more in depth than Instagram posts, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you have this thing, you have this curiosity, this self-educating thing where I want to learn more about this and more and more and more. And not everybody has that, as you know. What is it then that drove you to build these courses
Yeah. I would say
in the
the
first place?
first, I started I call it the Applied Performance Coaching Certification. I started that in really 2001 is when I like basically December 2020 is when I kind of kicked off the first cohort of this. So it's been, 4 years now. And it's funny there during COVID, we all had so much time on our hands.
Mm,
And I remember I went into my garage, this would have been back in California, and I turned the backside of my garage into just a giant whiteboard. So it was probably, an 8 by 8 whiteboard. And I just started to map out, quote unquote, my philosophy, right, of coaching, because we all get asked that question, what's your philosophy? And I never had a good answer for it. Um, so I was like, man, I got a lot of time. And so I would just start kind of mapping out like how I connect the dots with these different ideas and concepts. And then I took that and formalized it, through on my computer. And I'm like, what would this look like as far as like a curriculum? And I remember sitting there and I'm like, oh, wow, this is after 6 months of doing this, it turned into 22 different chapters. It was 22
Mm.
different folders. And I'm like, well, in theory, if this is 22 units, that's 22 modules. I could break those down. Like, could this be something? And so I think it was just me ultimately trying to like piece together how I think about all this stuff. And then I showed it to a few, people in my coaching circle, and they were like, dude, this is gold. And so, that just kind of developed, I think, from there. But I think it started ultimately from like, it was something I wish I had when I was growing up. Like, early in my career, there was no one that kind of sat me down. It was like, this is a way to think about all of this stuff comprehensively, collectively. It's not a system. It's not, this is how I do things and go and copy it. Like, I don't really think that that necessarily works very well. But to me, it's just like, here's everything I think about and learn, and here's a way that I can kind of share it and present it in. And when I first started that, I didn't, we all have that imposter syndrome. Who am I to do this and all those things? And but after like the first cohort of coaches coming through it, they were like, dude, this is crazy. This is like underpriced and all this stuff. And so just kind of have sat there and built that over the past few years.
Mm.
And so and coaches have, it's resonated with coaches. And I think it's in part because we've moved so quickly from a space where I think access to information was hard. And now it's almost like over information is the new challenge, right? How do we filter through that? And so no different than I think sharing research. I'm just trying to provide a filter for coaches. Because I think feeling
How do
overwhelmed
you
is,
so how do you combat that challenge yourself?
yeah.
So I'll ask this in two parts. How do you figure out yourself with your experience what the difference is between good information that you should be paying attention to, and bad information?
hmm
And number two, how do you then share that with the community?
Yeah. To answer the first one, I think my default answer is probably like the first level of like, as I think through filtering, it's like, what's the first level, right? Like, how do we even allow this information to come into the door? Like, if this
Mm.
is a club, how are they going to get past the security? And I think the first one is I typically just start with like, what's the source, right? Is it a source that this is a coach that's been doing this for a long time at a high level, and at least at the surface level, we should be able to trust them. And if so, like allow that information in, right? We'll deal with it later. Is it research that's reputable and from a good lab or a bunch of good researchers that have if the answer is yes, like let that in, right? And so then once it's in the club, it's like, okay, now we probably need to be a little bit more skeptical and critical of this information. How do we unpack it from there? Is okay, if it's a research study or something, let's actually look at the methods. Did they control for the variables that they should have? Do they at least talk about the ones that they didn't? Are there alternative explanations to this stuff? So we're kind of critical in that regard. And then if it's coaching, to me, it's just simply, are they explaining this as if it's fact and it works with every athlete, or which I think you do a really good job of, or do they subtly remind you that there's nuances here and that this might not work for everybody, and they're honest about that. And if they are, that's probably good too. So I think it's just some level of what's the source, and then how are they presenting it? Because the easy one to probably point to is like injuries, but anytime an athlete gets hurt, there's people all over the internet that talk about that injury, and it's like, this is what they did wrong and all this stuff, and it's like, that's probably not, you probably don't appreciate how complex this stuff actually is. And so because of that, I'm probably just going to put that in the junk folder, right? It's like, you don't actually appreciate how complicated and complex injuries are. And if you could take a still image of an athlete and say this is why they got hurt, I'm probably not going to believe anything you're going to say from now on, right? It's like,
Right.
that's kind of how I do it.
Right.
So yeah, and I'm not great at it, right? Like we all, I think, struggle with it. But I think over time you just begin to appreciate better resources or better sources from others. And now, it's funny now what I do, if someone posts something that I think is just ridiculous and they do it with a lot of arrogance, and I just literally unfollow them on Instagram, right? It's like I don't even want to see that because I don't believe that to be true, right? And I think some people push back on that. It's like, oh, you should expose yourself to information that challenges your beliefs, which I do agree with, but I can find that from other people who do it better, who do it with amount of humility that, like explain the nuances than I think others. So yeah, that's kind of how I try to do it. I wouldn't say I'm great at it though.
First, I love that metaphor of getting past security and getting in the room, getting in the club. I love that. I'm gonna steal that one. Um, Second, do you think that you then, as a coach educator, has a responsibility to not only point younger coaches or other coaches towards what you think is good information, but also away from the bad information or what you think may be the bad information? It seems to me like you don't do that. You just do the former.
Yeah, and you know it's funny, it's I always make the running joke with like just people in my, friends in my group chats. It's like, dude, I need a burner account
Yeah.
because as much as I see stuff and I'm like, I really don't agree with that. And people send me stuff all the time. What do you think about this? But I just have leaned all the way, hopefully, into the former. And if someone ever catches me doing the opposite, just hold me accountable to it.
Mm,
Because I think it's so easy to be negative. I think it's so easy you know, to see someone post something that I would disagree with and then go and make content about why I disagree with that or something like that. And um, but I don't. Early in my career, I would argue with people on the internet, and I have a golden rule now. Is like I don't argue on the internet anymore. Uh, so hopefully, I'm only doing the former. I do. I wouldn't say I feel like I have a responsibility for either of them. I think that I enjoy doing it, and it's almost like I think my way of paying it forward at some level, right? Like people have helped me, and hopefully I can help them. But I think it is hard. I mean, it's hard, and you probably deal with it too. It's hard to see people say things that you know are maybe not true, or probably they didn't do a good job of appreciating the nuance or the caveats that should be explained there. And so sometimes it is hard for me to not let like my Twitter fingers go and like say something, right? But
yeah.
usually that doesn't actually help anybody. So I try to kind of avoid that if I can.
No, it doesn't, right? But I always, and I did this myself, getting arguments on the internet, man. I said, going back 20 years, early days on Super Training Forum, I would argue with people. It's just silly. It doesn't get anybody, anywhere. But it's still, I struggle with it, man. I struggle with it because there's so many coaches who just want to get smarter. They just want to learn. They just want to know what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got other coaches that are taking advantage of that, whether it's volitional or not,
Mm-hmm.
and are sharing this, man, that's just bad information.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard. You know what I mean? Like if you don't know, you don't know. Like and so many younger coaches, they don't know yet. That's cool, right?
Right.
This is kind of that's the educating process. And that's kind of why I really appreciated your metaphor of how you deal with that. But it's hard. And I
Yeah.
don't
No
know
doubt.
if I'm a young coach coming up, I would really struggle with it. I mean, as a young coach when I came up, early 90s, pretty easy. There
Yeah.
was only three or four places to go for information.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't an inf there was an information problem at that point. We didn't
Yep.
have a lot of information.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could be almost guaranteed that most of the information that we found was pretty legit.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it's 99% of the information that's out there and available to a young coach just learning the way is
Yeah.
trash.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a
No doubt.
problem.
No
And that's
doubt.
why I always find that, all right, is my role just pointing them towards people like you or people like Altis or people like Les Spellman or whoever's I feel is doing really good stuff for the right reasons? Or do I also have a responsibility to say, hey, this cat over here, don't go there.
Yeah.
Ignore
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ignore
Yeah.
her. Don't
Yeah.
do that stuff. And I
For sure.
don't. And I just feel like, as you said, I'd rather just be positive.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into because that only goes one way, as we said, right? It just leads to arguments.
For sure. And you said so much to like even the thing too about I think arguing with on the people on the internet because I've had people like go on my comments and like like I posted recently like I think a review about isometrics or something and they went into my comment section to like complain about the methods of the paper and almost attack me as if I was the author of the paper, right? Um, and every part of me wanted to respond, and then you sit there and you realize like if I do this, they're gonna respond. It's gonna become a back and forth. It's actually gonna take up my time. As mature as I think I am, like there's a level of I think like attention that I'm gonna give to this now. Now I'm gonna be worried about it. I'm gonna be at dinner with my girlfriend. I'm gonna think about that, right? Like it's gonna take a mental bandwidth that is not worth it at all.
Yeah.
But sometimes it is hard. It's like, why would this person say this, right?
Uh-huh.
And the other thing you said there too, which I think is so true, like, and I'm only 33 years old, so this is like, uh, take it with a grain of salt, but in the early 2000s or even before then, it was like for you to get access to information, you had to go to a library.
Hmm.
Maybe it was early in the internet, but you had to do a real search to go find this thing. Maybe if you consumed information from a VHS or a DVD, it at least meant that the person that put that together, whether it was through a book or a product, they spent a good amount of time working on that. And so
Hmm.
you would imagine there was some level of thought that went into that. But now, I mean, shit, I can grab my phone right now and say whatever I want on the internet in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And so that is really hard because it's so easy for people to make content, which means that most of the time it's, as you've suggested, like it doesn't necessarily mean it's good content. And because the reality is good content actually takes longer to make than bad content. And so if someone's pumping out so much, it's like, I don't know how much I believe there. So yeah, it makes it hard for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. What's your current process like when it comes to educating yourself? Do you
Oh
have a
man.
structure to it, or you just, all right, I got a problem in front of me. Let me figure out more about that problem. All right, I got to learn about this, and this to get through it. Or do you have something, you have a range of interests that you always kind of researching, trying to figure out?
Yeah, as I would say yes and no to like both sides. Like I have it, if I hit a button right here for my tabs, I probably have 47 tabs open on my computer in 12 different windows. So like
Mm.
there's always so much going on the computer. Like I can have 12 PDFs open about 12 different things. And so at some level it feels like at times just this hodgepodge of information of anything I think is interesting. If you post something on Twitter and I see it, I might click on that and like, okay, I need to read that.
Yeah.
And so, like, at some level, it's just this kind of fire hydrant system of just try to take it all in. But then I do have some structure around it. Like, I'm fairly organized with the way that I go about trying to learn over time. So, like, if I'm hot on the topic, like right now, I'm kind of hot on trying to appreciate tendons. So I have like 4 or 5 papers that I know that's for the next week. That's kind of the focal point. Um, and I have kind of folders that are organized by titles, and so there's some level of I think structure of trying to bring it all together. But most of the time, it's we probably all deal with this. Is we're all so interested in so much information that if it's strength, in my mind, if it's basically strength training, if it's testing related, if it's rehab and injury related, and if it's nutrition related to performance, I've done better recently of narrowing the scope to like more sport performance stuff because back in the day, if it was about fat loss, I would read that too. And it was like, oh my God, it's taking up too much time now, right? So I kind of have those 4 levels of it's like if it's testing, if it's training, if it's rehab, if it's recovery, and then nutrition related to any of those, then
Mm.
it fits and it basically, I'm allowed to spend time on that. But if it's not any of those, I really don't spend much time on it anymore. Um, so if there's like a paper about gut health or something, it's like that's probably interesting. I'm not spending time on that right now because that's just not where I'm focused in this current chapter, at least.
Is that the biggest change that you've kind of gone through in your career? Then you've just become a little bit more discerning about what you're going to spend time researching, learning about?
Yeah, for sure. And
Um,
I still have systems to save that stuff. So like if there's a paper like on fat loss or something that might be relevant to more complete human health or something, I'll still save those and store those because there may be a chapter 2 years from now where it's like, oh, I'm actually, maybe I'm not in a coaching role anymore. Maybe I'm doing something. So I still want to. It's probably more my own insecurity. It's like I want to know that I still have that somewhere to go and deal with it later. But yeah, I think for sure trying to just be more discerning about because there is so much out there. It's like if you
mhm.
let yourself access and read everything, to me, it's gonna be hard for you to learn if you don't go deep on a topic, and if everything you do is just superficial, bouncing around on everything, it's like, well, 5% about a million things. Congratulations. I would rather actually know a fair amount about 5 or 6 things. And it's like that's if you ask me about those things, I could help you out. If you ask me about gut health right now, I'm not your guy, right? And like that's okay. So yeah, trying to be more discerning about those
I,
things.
I was going to ask you, just before you said going deep there, you seem to me like the kind of guy who goes deep on one or two things at a time. And I'm similar. Like I get an interest and I get a curiosity about this thing, and I just go super deep to the point where I get lost. and I don't know how to get my way back out. I'm just so deep in, where am I now? Right. I'm just looking around and saying, all right, I'm just totally lost. Do you find yourself sometimes just going a little bit too deep and you lose sort of context where this fits into everything? And if that happens, and when that happens, because I know it probably does happen, what do you do? How do you dig yourself out of that depth?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You know what's helped a ton? I do this performance insider newsletter now, so I just share these things, and that's helped a ton because it's allowed me to kind of, I think, I guess at some level categorize. So if I find myself going deep on something, and now it's funny, I got caught last week going super deep on isometrics for some reason, and I literally had a tab up with like probably like realistically 18 different research studies.
Hmm.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, why am I reading about weightlifters in the 90s doing this dynamic pull? And why am I so interested in table 2 that's showing the male versus female peak forces? Like, this has nothing, I will never use this drill. I will never use this exercise. This has nothing to do with basketball players. And I'm sitting there sending screenshots to some buddies in my group chat. And it's almost like they're like, hey, bro, come on back, bro. Come on back. Like, we don't even care about that. And we're strength coaches. Like, come on back now.
Uh,
So yeah, there's definitely times where you kind of get lost in it, but it's probably just that curiosity, you know. It's like this to me is super interesting, and I think it's almost like the antithesis. Going deep is almost the antithesis to social media, almost.
mm,
Like, I could open up Instagram right now and somebody's probably doing some type of isometric pull on force plates or something, right? Like, we've all seen these things. And I was literally reading a paper the other day, and in the methods, this was from 1996. In the methods, it said isometric pulls were done on a on a specialized squat rack, and in parentheses it said Sornex Inc. And I'm sitting there like, this was
wow.
with force plates on Sornex racks. And I swear 10 minutes ago on Instagram, there was a young coach who made me believe that was brand new, right? And it's like, nothing is new. Everything is
Uh-huh.
just, rebranded, regurgitated, maybe done at a higher level. But yeah, I would almost argue the antithesis to social media. And so that's helped me at times for sure. It's like, man, it don't, at some level, it feels good to go deep on topics and like really unpack them and appreciate them because I mean, maybe it's me, like we're just also used to just scrolling,
Mm,
and it's like, slow down. There might be some gold in there. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's
100%. And one thing that really struck with me that you said there is what helps you get you out of that hole is sharing it with your people. And it
mm,
could be, just a WhatsApp group. It could be your people in a newsletter, whatever. But if you have to share it, you have to make sense of it. So if you're so deep in and you can't make sense of where you're at, okay, I got to find a way to make sense of this to the people who aren't deep in here with me. And
yeah,
that really helps me get out.
yeah,
So anytime I get too deep in the hole, all right, I need to make sense of this better. So let me write about all the stuff I know about this and then share it with a few thousand people
yeah,
because they don't care about being deep in this hole with me, but they need to understand what I've learned down here.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's the challenge that holds you accountable almost. It's like, if you can really learn this, you should be able to explain it pretty simply. Well, while not losing some of the nuances and like one thing in my newsletter I used to put in was like p values and I don't most of the stats I actually have began to delete because I realized that maybe 5 to 10 people needed that because they're researchers and they cared. The reality is most people don't need, the deep end. They just need to know what's in the water. And so I'm trying to just give them that a little bit.
Love that.
But yeah,
Yep.
it's a hard challenge.
Yeah, man. Final question here, or final two questions. You were an assistant strength coach in the NBA when you were 23.
Hmm.
You were a head strength coach in the NBA when you were 25.
Hmm.
I think back to when I was 23, 24, and 25. I was an idiot. I didn't know anything. And I didn't know a 23, 24, or 25-year-old that knew anything. Man, I didn't know anything when I was 33, 34. Like, so what is it? Like, how did you come about it so early? Like, what was it that you were different? What made you different that you could have this sort of role at such a young age? And then how did you handle kind of all the pressure, the responsibility, the scrutiny that probably came along with it? Like I know for sure that you're probably, man, Do I really should I be here? I'm just a young kid. I don't know what I'm doing here. Like,
Yeah.
how did you deal with all of that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I don't know, looking back, like there was a ton that I didn't know, obviously, right? But when you're in those moments, you don't think through that stuff. And there was a ton of imposter syndrome and a ton of like insecurity, right? Like, why is everyone looking at me? Why does the GM think I shouldn't have this role? Like those types of things come to mind. But ultimately, I think just I was super fortunate. Like there's no beating around the bush. I was just lucky. My mentor, Chip Schaefer, who brought me in as his assistant. This was at a time in the NBA where I think I was the 23rd. This wasn't even too long ago. This would have been 10 years ago. 2014, I think I was like the 23rd or 24th assistant in the NBA. So even at that time, 10 years ago, every NBA team did not have an assistant strength coach. Everybody had a head strength coach, but they didn't have assistants necessarily. And so I just walk into this kind of role where, everyone doesn't even have an assistant. So the expectation isn't necessarily that high. It was also probably the perfect timing of the technological wave that's kind of gone through, especially with catapults and GPS and all these things. It all just kind of aligned to where me being a younger guy, being able to take on that kind of thing felt really easy. So like that was like my first role was basically the GPS monitoring and some of that stuff. I wasn't even writing programs. I was basically coaching and making sure I was collecting the data. That was it.
Mhm.
And force plates at the time were we bought two AMTI force plates with two high-speed cameras for $30,000. You can get that now for $2,000, right? So I think I just probably got really lucky with not only people taking a chance on me, but also there was this kind of technological wave that being young probably helped, right? It's like
Right.
I was used to dealing with technology. And so those were kind of my first roles that. And then I think it was just building relationships. I was also fortunate because we had a young roster. So I was the age of a lot of our players. A lot of our players were 21 to 27.
Yep.
So, I would use things like music. I was listening to the same music they were listening to. So I was the one that was the DJ of the weight room. I would put a new song on. I wasn't writing any programs. I was just coaching and trying to relate. And I think it's funny, all those things that, I think if you're a critic, somebody might say, well, that's not even coaching related. It's like, well, if you believe that coaching is relationships and that's relationship building. And so I got really lucky in that 2 year time to have some really good mentorship and to be able to take on projects that I think I was well equipped for because I was young. And so then it was like, okay, this guy can run the catapults and he could run the force plates, and the players seemed to like him a lot. And so after 24 months of that, I think people just began to look around like, oh, damn. And he's also always on time and he pulls bags at 3 a.m. and he's always around. One benefit of being young is I didn't have a lot of responsibilities. I didn't have a girlfriend, a wife, a kids. I didn't have none. I didn't even have a dog. It's like I got nothing to do but hang out in here. And so I think people just were like, this dude's always in here. So yeah, over time, those relationships turned into to people trusting me, being involved with rehabs and stuff like that, being able to actually try to help some guys. I think trying to show my work a little bit, and all that came to the forefront when I was 25. My boss left the Chicago Bulls. And I remember Pete Youngman, who was our director of sports medicine, he came to me and he was like, hey, you think you could run this? And I said, man, I know I could run this shit, right? Just kind of talking a little bit. And he was like, you know what, man, I believe you. And I'm going to go tell our front office right now. And
Okay.
it's funny because right after I told him that, we had a draft workout. And so I'm doing all of the draft testing. And I go through the whole draft testing and I forget to take everyone's wingspan. So I take all their anthropometrics and then we do vertical jump, change of direction, sprint, all that stuff. And then I go into my computer because I'm writing it all down on the clipboard. This was even before iPad automatic inputs were there, right? I'm just writing it on the clipboard. I would run into the office, input it into Excel, hit print, and then we would hand that out to all the GMs. Well, what I realized as I sit down to type is I forgot everybody's wingspan. And I'm like, oh shit, I just told these people that I can do this. And I clearly can't do this, right? So it's funny. I go out to the players. There's 6 players. NBA draft workouts usually have 6 players. And I go to all 6 of them because they're tying their shoes, getting ready to go onto the court. And I say, hey, y'all, I kind of messed this up, but this is kind of like my interview. So don't tell nobody. Just quickly come in here. Let me get your wingspan, but y'all can't be loud about this. And they were like, dude, we got you. So I was able to get that. So it's funny. Like I remember literally messing up 10 seconds after telling them I could do this. And then there's also, this is long winded, but I remember halfway through that year, we were number 1 in the league on the good side of games lost due to injury. And in professional sports, as much as we all care about performance, the reality is we probably get graded more on whether or not players are available. And we were number one in the NBA up until this moment. It was closer to All-Star break. So we were getting towards the finish line, and I had a player, unfortunately, knock on wood, tear an Achilles on me. And worst day of my career, you're sitting there. I think I read every systematic review on Achilles tendon ruptures that night. You don't go to sleep, like all this stuff, and you just sit there and realize, like, damn, man, 10 hours ago I felt so good and confident in what we could do, and I'm going to bed tonight questioning whether or not I'm even equipped to actually do this. In those moments, I think we all need them in our careers because they're humbling and they're good reminders that sometimes you could feel like you're doing it all right and something can still go wrong, and all the learning lessons there. So yeah, I don't even know if that answered the question, but that's kind of the story, and hopefully it was answered a little bit.
100%, man. Ramsey, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on. I look forward to meeting you in person in a few months.
Yeah, likewise, Stu. I appreciate you reaching out, man. It's a pleasure to actually connect with you. I respect everything you've done for the past, 40 years? How long have you been coaching?
Too long.
Yeah, so I appreciate
Too
it.
long, man. Appreciate your time, man.
Thank you.
All right. Cool, man. Hey, that was great. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. It was cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was, I didn't even read through the questions. I know you sent them, but I'm like, man, if I read through these, I'm gonna probably
I
try to
I
script
I
it.
don't think we touched on one of them.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
hopefully
I don't
that's
think we
okay.
touched on one of those questions that I sent. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, that was good. And you know it's a good conversation when you don't have to read off a bunch of questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I
That was fun for me. I appreciate you.
likewise. Yeah, I'm excited to meet in person as well and learn. It's gonna be a fun event. I'm glad I even got the call. I remember thinking, well, if this is technical, I don't know why y'all are calling me. You're the technical guys. I call you. I read your stuff. Uh, I think it's looking like it's gonna shape up to be fun.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Nice.
All
Cool.
right, dude.
All right, Stu. Appreciate it. Take care.
Well, that was a really interesting conversation. I'd never met Ramsey before, so it's really great to get to know him a little bit here. He's clearly had a ton of success, and after that conversation, it's not surprising why, right? Big thanks once again to our sponsors, 3x4 Genetics, Stat Sports, 1080 Sprint, Team Builder, for making this podcast and the upcoming Altis Speed Summit possible. If you have not grabbed your ticket yet, please head over to altis.world, and we'll see you in Chicago, June 6th, 7th, and 8th. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.